what would Oliver's life be like had he never gotten on the Queen's Gambit?
We, chose to devote, basically half the episode to this alien virtual reality that Oliver and his friends find themselves in.
We've been through a lot in Star City, but Aliens is a whole new level.
A war is coming.
It sort of is kind of ridiculous that we're telling a 3-part crossover that are 2 different spin-offs and then one from another network that came to our network, and it's just crazy.
One thing that is cool about the crossover this year is episode 508 of Arrow, which is the middle part of the crossover, is also Arrow's 100th episode. It was sort of the It's a Wonderful Life version of Arrow, where Oliver Queen never got on the Queen's Gambit, and he never became a superhero, but he still can't change who he is.
Wallace, get away from him.
Inside, he is a hero.
We decided to title the episode Invasion for many reasons, one of which is obviously there are aliens coming to Earth and they are threatening to invade. But also, it's sort of a metaphor as well for Oliver kind of invading his past life and looking at his past and having the opportunity to experience this alternate reality.
And sort of checking with these characters that we love, Laurel especially, where, she's back and sort of the fulcrum in terms of his connection from that dream life to his real life. And sort of the idea that Oliver will go in sort of the stasis chamber where the aliens will try to influence his mind, and through that we'll get to see sort of his sort of journey of where he started and sort of where he is now. And coming out of that, how he feels about Laurel and how that sort of ties into what he's been trying to do with the team, and whether he's been living up to what Laurel wanted for him.
We referenced The Matrix a lot when we were working on the story, but the truth of the matter is that there's a lot of comic book history that we're drawing from and taking inspiration from. There's the famous Superman annual that Alan Moore wrote for The Man Who Has Everything.
Where you sort of give him his perfect life and see if he was meant to be that way without it made him happier.
Wouldn't he still be a hero? And I think, The Man Who Has Everything says, yes, he's still, Superman. Even staying as Kal-El and never becoming Superman, never lost his core values. It was who he is as a person. In comic books, there's a long, rich history of exploring the road not taken. DC had its Elseworlds line. I think it's something that the fans really enjoy. I think it really has become sort of a universal kind of comic book story, because the questions raised by these kinds of stories is always, does the story make the hero, or does the hero make the story? And that was definitely something we were trying to get across with Oliver and his compatriots.
They've put me into a world where I never got on my father's boat. I think you're a hero, and I don't think it's because of any boat.
He's a guy who had to become a superhero. He was born with a lot, but then tragedy befell, and he had to sort of bootstrap his way up into heroism. And over the course of the 5 years, through determination and grit and a little bit of humility, he's figured out how to be a really great guy. And I think that's a little bit what this season is about, is how can he be the best version of himself?
I think Oliver has somebody who has always thought very deeply about the moral questions that his work raises. There's more than one way to right his father's wrongs. And Oliver has, I think, really struggled with that.
Now, I could have killed Damien Dark before that night at Iron Heights. I had multiple chances to do so, and I didn't. Because I thought that taking the high road was more important than saving lives, and that is a mistake that I will never, ever make again.
I think in this season, we've really seen him evolve from a killer, a very cold-hearted killer.
I'm sorry, but nobody can know my secret.
To someone who is really struggling with the question of whether or not killing is right.
I thought I could trust you. We could trust you. I was wrong.
Since superheroes are so powerful and some of them seem to get away with quite a lot, it is important to show them pausing, reflecting.
I failed these recruits as a leader.
And considering and discussing their actions with others, because otherwise they can just become bullies. Likewise with Oliver, we need to see him in the lair, looking at things, asking, could I have done more for this? Did I go too far on this? It makes them not just interesting and more relatable, but it also keeps them from becoming the forces that they're fighting. Flawed characters are interesting in general because there's a lot you can do with them. There's a lot entertaining about someone who you believe in,
On the line.
but you see them going on the wrong path. You understand why they're doing something, but man, that's a dumb decision. And we relate to that. It makes good drama. But also, with a character like Arrow in the television universe, they're damaged, but they're not broken.
He's not gonna kill him, is he?
That's a terrific question.
And it is a constant struggle and decision-making process of, I will not become the bad guys I fight.
All my other nuts are...
He's wise. I mean, ultimately, he's the father of this entire universe. He understands, I think, the dark side of human nature in a way that even Barry doesn't, even with the tragedies that he's experienced. So I think that's one thing that the others really look to him for, which is kind of his wisdom and experience.
All right, well, I guess as team leader, first thing to do is start out by
Doing a test run.
let's do a test run. Yeah, let's do a test run.
Against Supergirl.
Against Supergirl, all right? Test run against Supergirl.
And the other thing is, I think he has a strength and an ability to kind of cut to the core of issues and challenges and come up with a plan.
Been remembering things, it's like they're dreams, but they're not, John. I don't think that any of this is real.
When he starts realizing that this isn't real life, he needs to get back to the city, even if that means never seeing his father again, never seeing his mother. He knows that even though he's been through all these tragedies, that's what he was meant for.
Why can't you just for a second accept that maybe this is your reward for all of the sacrifices you have made?
I didn't make those sacrifices for a reward, Thea. I did what I did because I thought it was right.
Once you start to fight the dream state, your unconscious sends enemies to kill you, and we have Deathstroke and all the enemies from years past. Damien Dark comes in and fights, and I think that's pretty cool. In a sense, that is sort of a metaphor for his journey as a hero. He looks for truth, he fights for truth, he fights for good, and people put up a fight, and he wins.
Whether you're talking about anxiety, dreams, or just fears you have in life, there are things you can't punch. That's something that you have to deal with psychologically, and you have to battle this psychologically. Oliver is someone who often wonders, have I made any progress? So this trap of making him relive old enemies actually winds up benefiting him, because when you're actually forced to look at all these things that have made up the series Arrow, you can't escape, look what I have accomplished. And on a long enough timeline, I've been doing more good than bad, and that can reinvigorate the hero and the spirit in the story.
Laurel's death had a tremendous impact on the end of season 4 and on Oliver in particular. He feels responsible for it in some ways.
Maybe if I showed a little less restraint, Laurel might still be alive.
The conclusion that he came to was, is this the right way to do things? If the price is going to be that high and it's going to cause that much grief, and I think that's why we see at the top of the season, he is still willing to kill, and he does still think that's the right way, because that's the only way to protect the people that he loves and protect the people that are with him.
And you always deserve better.
And I think when, in that last moment, when he finally lets her go,
I love you. I love you.
It's emotionally significant for him, especially in terms of the first few episodes of the season, to finally say, okay, I did make the right decision, even though it resulted in this tragic thing that happened. And the only way to make it right is to make sure that I do fulfill my mission, which is to keep the city safe.
I could not be more proud.
You ordered the deadline fighting, and you are not done fighting.
So it makes for such a big moment in already such a big crossover.
No, I called you a murderer, but you are not. You are a hero.
It's both a very personal, very intimate story, but it's also this sort of giant linchpin of this crazy alien invasion story.
I know who you are in your bones, Oliver, and that person doesn't give up.
This is your responsibility now.
I think in the beginning of the series, he was not so much embracing of his destiny and of his potential, but rather he was looking to right his father's wrongs. And I think coming out of the crossover, we have a different Oliver Queen, one who is ready to accept his mission and is no longer denying his true self.
Here's a guy who's been through an incredible amount of pain. If he could reset, would he give it all up? Would he give up all that heartache for the sake of a nice, easy life?
You've got everything. Everything, man. Stop trying to throw it all away.
Maybe, but he doesn't. And that is what makes him a leader. He's willing to take the heartache of not having that dream to do the right thing and get out and beat the bad guys.
This is your life now.
No, it isn't.
He ultimately has to come to grips with the fact that he doesn't have a choice. He can't just stay in Never Never Land and pretend that the outside world doesn't exist.
Seeing all of this is just, it has shown me that there is still so much more to do.
And in many ways, I think Oliver making that decision positions us for the next 100 episodes, because Oliver is now someone who is fully embraced his destiny.
I think in this episode, this particular crossover, he learns more from his own experience in the alternate reality than he does necessarily from Barry or from Supergirl. It removes a lot of the doubt he was feeling coming out of the previous episode, and he's going to come out of Invasion with a renewed conviction about his journey and his path in the past, and also where he's headed in the future.